Anger is easy. Anyone can lose control. Anyone can slam the doors, raise their voice, or walk away muttering that they've had enough. But mastery, real mastery, begins when you stop treating anger as strength and start seeing it for what it is. Weakness disguised as power. The Stoics were ruthless in their analysis of human emotion, and they saw anger not as a righteous flame, but as a kind of blindness. Seneca called it a brief insanity, and in that instant of rage, you forget reason, dignity, and perspective, all to satisfy a fleeting urge to feel the control again. The problem is that anger feels righteous, it feels moral. When someone disrespects you, when the world frustrates your efforts, when you are misunderstood or ignored, anger arrives wearing the mask of justice. You tell yourself, I have the right to be angry, but the Stoics would say, no, you have the responsibility to stay rational. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to become your enemy, because every time you let anger dictate your behavior, you become what you claim to despise. Impulsive, reactive, ruled by emotion rather than guided by wisdom. Seneca went further. He believed that anger is not only useless, but destructive, even to the one who feels it. It hurts the angry man more than the one against it, whom it has directed. Think about that. You think your anger punishes others, but it first poisons you. It distorts your thoughts, it ruins your sleep, and weakens your ability to see things clearly. You lose your composure, your timing, your awareness. You become less effective, not more. That's why the Stoics viewed anger as self-sabotage, an inner betrayal disguised as self-defense. But what can you do when the fire rises? When someone's words or actions ignite that familiar heat in your chest? The Stoics didn't tell you to suppress it. Suppression is a quieter form of rage. And it always returns stronger. Instead, they advise recognition. Notice the emotion as it appears. Say to yourself, this is anger. Label it without judgment. Marcus Aurelius practiced this mental separation, a small act of awareness that reclaims distance between the self and the storm. Once you name it, you no longer are the anger. You have the anger, and that difference is everything. Imagine a soldier facing an ambush. Panic is natural, but if he gives into it, he dies. If he pauses, breathes, assesses, he may yet survive. Stoicism trains you to pause in the same way. Between the event and your reaction lies a moment of choice, the tiny space where virtue lives and where anger loses its grip. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This isn't a slogan, it's a foundation of emotional freedom. When you delay your reaction, you reclaim your power. The other person no longer controls your state of mind. You do. Modern life gives you countless chances to practice this. A rude driver cuts you off. A co-worker starts taking credit for your effort. A friend betrays your trust. You can lash out and lose the battle for self-control. Or you can use that pain as a reminder. Here's another test. The Stoic doesn't seek a life free of offense. He seeks a mind free of dependence on offense. He doesn't suppress the flame. He learns to hold the torch without burning himself. Over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to see anger not as a threat, but as a signal. It points to something inside of you. An attachment, an expectation, an unhealed wound. Anger reveals where you still demand the world to behave according to your script. Every insult, every injustice, every disappointment becomes a minor reflecting of your own fragility. And once you see it, you can begin the work of liberation. That is the first lesson of Stoic control, to understand that the person who angers you is not your enemy. Your attachment to how things should be is. You will never eliminate anger completely. You don't need to. You only need to shorten its lifespan, weaken its hold, and turn it from a master into a messenger. Because the moment you can observe your anger without acting on it, you have already won.
There is something humiliating about realizing how easily we lose control. You can read all the books, meditate every morning, and quote the Stoics fluently, but then someone cuts you off in traffic, disrespects you in public, or challenges your sense of importance, and suddenly you're not a philosopher anymore. You're an animal with clenched teeth, raised voice, and trembling hands. That's when you meet the real enemy. Not the person who offended you, but the part of yourself that still believes anger will fix things. Seneca said that no man becomes angry at things he truly despises. We only get angry at what we still value too much: approval, control, recognition. Every outburst reveals a chain still tied around your soul. When you're furious because someone insulted you, what you're really saying is, I depend on their respect. When you rage because things didn't go as planned, what you mean is, I expected reality to obey me. Anger exposes attachment. It is the friction between your ideals and the world's indifference. The Stoics didn't try to eliminate anger by pretending to be emotionless statues. They sought to understand its anatomy, to dissect it like a physician examining a wound. Seneca divided it into three stages. First comes the impression. Something happens. A spark touches your mind. Second comes the assent. You judge the event as unjust or offensive. And finally comes the response. Words, actions, or violent silence. The first stage is automatic. The second and third, however, belong to your reason. Between them lies the only battlefield that matters: choice. Epictetus would tell his students, when you are offended, it is not the act itself that hurts you, but your opinion of it. It sounds almost cruel at first, as if he's saying your pain is your fault. But he isn't dismissing your feelings, he's pointing out their source. You cannot stop people from being cruel, selfish, or ignorant. You can only stop them from ruling your emotions. If you can control your judgment, no insult can truly wound you. Because what they said is only sound, it is your interpretation that gives it meaning. This is why Stoicism calls anger a failure of perception. You see an enemy where there's only a mirror. When someone mocks you, you see disrespect, but what if it's their insecurity spilling over? When a stranger yells, you see aggression, but what if it's their fear dressed as fury? The Stoic doesn't excuse others' behavior. He simply refuses to hand them the keys to his peace. He understands that to react blindly is to surrender sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the offender does not know what he does, or he would not do it. That is compassion, not naivety. It's the understanding that ignorance, fear, and confusion drive most human behavior. To be angry at someone for acting within their ignorance is as foolish as being angry at a child for stumbling while learning to walk. You can correct, you can guide, you can defend yourself, but anger adds nothing but heat to an already chaotic fire. Think of it this way: every moment of anger is a test of your values. You say you want to be wise, patient, free, but the universe will send people to challenge those words. You cannot practice Stoicism in isolation. Philosophy is forged in friction. It is easy to be calm in silence. It is divine to be calm amid noise. The insult, the betrayal, the frustration, they are not interruptions to your practice, they are the practice. When you see them as such, the entire world becomes your training ground. This is the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is primitive. It's the echo of your wounded pride. Response is deliberate, the result of awareness. The Stoic cultivates the pause between stimulus and action, and in that pause, he decides not just what to do, but who to be. You can let anger define your next words, or you can let wisdom choose them. One path leads to regret, the other to self respect. The modern world tempts you to believe that expressing anger is authentic, that bottling it up is weakness. But Stoicism would say that anger is not authenticity, it's instability. You don't owe anyone your fury, you owe yourself your composure. Control is not repression, It is refinement. To feel anger and still choose your words. That is not suppression, that is strength. Anyone can shout. Only the discipline can stay silent and still hold power. And make no mistake, power is exactly what's at stake. Anger steals it first in small ways. You ruin an hour, a day, a conversation. But then it starts shaping your character. You become bitter, quick to judge, impossible to reason with. You start living on defense, interpreting everything as an attack. Soon, you're not defending your peace, you're defending your ego, and that is a battle no one wins. The Stoics believed that every act of anger is a rehearsal for slavery, because each one chains your mind to what lies outside it. The antidote, then, is not denial but awareness. Learn to catch the rise of heat before it takes over. When you feel it, breathe. Remember that anger demands speed, wisdom demands time. The one who pauses owns the moment. This is not weakness, it's the discipline of self-command. In that space, ask yourself, what exactly do I want right now? Justice or victory over myself? Only one of those leads to peace. And perhaps this is the most radical Stoic truth. You don't conquer anger by never feeling it. You conquer it by not serving it. You will still feel it, hear it whisper, see it tempting you to act, but it will no longer drive you. It becomes a visitor, not a ruler. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "When you wake, remember how many you will meet who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant," he wasn't complaining. He was preparing. Because expectation is the root of frustration, and preparation is the root of peace. So, the next time you feel that surge, pause. Don't suppress it, but don't feed it either. Recognize it, breathe through it, and smile at its arrival like an old adversary returning to test your resolve. You are not the emotion, you are the observer. And when you remember that, anger has nowhere left to live. Most people think controlling anger means pretending it isn't there, smiling when you want to scream, swallowing every frustration until it turns into poison. But Stoicism teaches something very different. Control, in the Stoic sense, is not about suppressing emotion. It's about transforming it, taking raw energy and refining it into strength, understanding, and precise action. The Stoic doesn't hide from his feelings. He governs them like a ruler governs a wild city, not through brutality, but through order and reason. Picture this. Someone insults you publicly. Maybe they question your intelligence, your work, your worth. You feel the familiar surge in your chest, that hot, sharp tension that demands immediate reaction. The ordinary person obeys it. They fire back, defend themselves, or retreat in wounded silence. But the Stoic pauses. He doesn't run away from the feeling, he studies it. He asks, what is this emotion trying to make me do? And more importantly, who would I become if I obeyed it? That pause is not weakness, it's mastery in motion. In that single moment of awareness, the Stoic regains control over himself, and therefore over the entire situation. Because the truth is, the one who keeps calm owns the room. Everyone else becomes a slave to the loudest voice, the most fragile ego. The Stoic understands that anger is theater, and the crowd always remembers who stayed composed when everyone else lost control. Marcus Aurelius wrote that when someone offends you, you should immediately ask yourself, is this really a moral injury or just a blow to my pride? In most cases, it's the second. Pride disguises itself as virtue. It says, they disrespected me, I must correct them. But reason whispers, if their insult is false, why be angry? And if it's true, why be ashamed? Either way, anger serves no purpose but to prove how easily you can be controlled. The moment someone can provoke you at will, they own your peace, and you gave it to them for free. Epictetus compared such moments to wrestling practice. He said that life throws us opponents not to defeat us, but to train us. When someone disrespects you, you have a chance to test your patience. When someone betrays you, you have a chance to strengthen your detachment. When something delays you, you have a chance to master frustration. Every irritation becomes an opportunity to build inner armor. You don't curse the weight in the gym. You lit it because resistance is what builds strength. Anger is the same. It's not the obstacle, it's the training ground. But what about injustice? What about when anger feels justified, when something truly wrong has happened? The Stoics faced this question head on. Seneca said that reason and anger do not march together. Justice guided by anger may begin noble but ends blind. To act effectively, you must separate clarity from chaos. The Stoic does not become passive, he becomes precise. He seeks justice without hatred, correction without contempt. He acts, not reacts. Because to fight chaos with chaos only multiplies it. This is perhaps the hardest Stoic lesson for the modern world, where outrage is currency. Everyone wants to be seen as righteous, furious for the right reasons. But Stoicism warns that moral fury is still fury, and it clouds the same mind it claims to defend. When you allow anger to define your activism, your leadership, or your relationships, you become reactive instead of wise. True Stoic strength is cold fire, passion disciplined by logic, empathy balanced with judgment. Think of Cato, the Roman senator known for his incorruptible virtue. Surrounded by greed, betrayal, and political corruption, he refused to meet chaos with rage. When mocked or slandered, he stayed silent. When outnumbered, he stood firm. His calmness was not indifference, it was defiance. Because nothing terrified his enemies more than a man they could not provoke. This composure doesn't come overnight. It's built through a lifetime of deliberate practice, small daily acts of resistance against the pull of emotion. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you breathe instead of cursing, that's training. When your plans fail and you adjust without rage, that's training. When you're insulted and you choose dignity over defense, that's training. These moments seem small, but they are what shape your character when the real storms arrive. The Stoics believe that philosophy isn't learned in books. It's lived in the marketplace, the family dinner, the battlefield of everyday life. And the most advanced practice of all is empathy. Not the soft, sentimental kind, but the Stoic kind, grounded in understanding human nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "People act as they do because they believe they are right. Everyone justifies their actions to themselves, even when they're wrong. The one who insults you does so because they're ignorant of their own motives. To hate them is to multiply their ignorance with your own. But to understand them, that is to remain above them." Empathy, for the Stoic, is not emotional weakness, it is intellectual superiority. Of course, there will be moments when calm feels impossible, when betrayal cuts too deep or injustice feels unbearable. The Stoic allows himself to feel, but not to drown. He acknowledges the emotion, expresses it through reason, and then releases it. Like a warrior cleaning his sword after battle, he does not carry yesterday's fury into tomorrow's fight. To hold on to anger is to drink poison and call it memory. Here lies the quiet paradox of Stoic mastery. To handle anger effectively, you must not seek to destroy it, but to understand it. Anger is energy, and energy can be redirected into discipline, into creation, into resolve. Marcus Aurelius himself ruled an empire under immense stress and betrayal, yet his journal, written in solitude, contains no hatred, no bitterness, only calm reflection. He turned the heat of his trials into the light of his wisdom. So the next time you feel the sting of anger, remember, you are not in a war against the world. You are in training for mastery. The insult is your sparring partner. The delay is your teacher. The injustice is your forge. Every moment that tempts you to lose control is a chance to build the rarest thing in the modern age, composure. Because in the end, anger is not defeated by force, but by understanding. And understanding begins the moment you stop fighting the world and start mastering yourself. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. No one escapes anger without a price. You may win arguments, silence opponents, or feel powerful for a few minutes, but afterward, something inside you always feels smaller. The fire that was supposed to defend your dignity ends up burning it. The Stoics warned that every act of anger is a negotiation where you trade reason for emotion and you always walk away poorer. Seneca once said, "Anger, if not restrained, is more destructive than any enemy." And he meant it literally. Modern science has only confirmed what the Stoics already knew. Anger raises blood pressure, weakens the heart, poisons sleep, and corrodes relationships. It blinds the mind and enslaves the soul. But beyond biology, there's something deeper. Anger deforms character. It trains you to interpret everything through the lens of conflict. You start expecting offense where there is none, seeing enemies in every shadow. The longer you let it live inside you, the less room there is for reason, joy, or love. The Stoics understood that anger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it wears the face of pride, sometimes of cold silence, sometimes of control. You think you're composed, but you're just frozen, a heart turned to ice from years of keeping score. You say you've forgiven, but you still replay the moment. You say you've moved on, but you still flinch when the person's name is mentioned. That's not peace, that's paralysis. Stoicism doesn't want you numb, it wants you free. And freedom begins when you no longer need to carry the pain as proof of what happened. Marcus Aurelius called anger the worst form of self-punishment, because when you keep revisiting the wound, you're not punishing the one who caused it, you're re-injuring yourself. You keep drinking from the same cup, hoping it'll taste different. The Stoic way is to pour it out. Not because what happened was right, but because you deserve to stop suffering for it. To forgive is not to excuse, it's to release. You don't do it for them, you do it for your own clarity. Anger is addictive. It makes you feel alive, righteous, awake. There's a certain thrill in it, the illusion of power. But that thrill is short-lived, and like any addiction, it leaves you emptier than before. The Stoics warned that anger feeds the ego in the same way fire feeds itself, by consuming everything nearby. The more you indulge it, the more it needs. And soon you can't tell the difference between being strong and being furious. Epictetus said that most people don't want peace, they want permission to stay disturbed. That line strikes hard because it's true. We claim to want calm, but we nurture the drama that destroys it. We replay old arguments. We collect injustices like trophies. We cling to pain because it gives us identity. I was betrayed. I was disrespected. I was right. These phrases sound like wounds, but they're actually chains. The Stoic asks a harder question: who are you without your anger? If your peace depends on others behaving perfectly, you'll never have it. To understand this, imagine two people walking through the same storm. One curses the sky, shouting that the rain is unfair. The other adjusts his cloak, lowers his head, and keeps walking. They're both wet, but only one suffers. The Stoic refuses to curse the inevitable. He doesn't waste energy wishing the world would change its weather. He learns to walk through the storm with dignity intact. The cost of anger is not just emotional, it's moral. Every time you lose your temper, you lose a piece of your virtue. The Stoics believed that character was built moment by moment, decision by decision. When you allow anger to decide for you, you are not only acting against reason, you are erasing part of yourself. And what begins as an isolated outburst becomes habit, then temperament, then destiny. You become the person others fear to speak to, the one who justifies cruelty as honesty, the one who mistakes volatility for passion. The Stoics feared this degeneration more than any external hardship because they believed the greatest tragedy is not what happens to you, but what happens within you when you lose your command of reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you let anger paint you long enough, soon everything you see turns red. Every disagreement becomes an insult. Every delay becomes disrespect. Every challenge becomes a personal attack. You no longer see the world, you see reflections of your agitation. You become the prisoner, not the victim. And yet, there's a strange comfort in anger. It simplifies everything. It gives you someone to blame. It tells you that you're right, that the world owes you an apology. That's why it's so seductive. But the Stoic refuses this false comfort. He chooses the harder path, the one that demands humility. He admits, maybe the world isn't wrong, maybe my perception is. And that moment of humility is liberation. Sick, it doesn't make the pain vanish, but it restores perspective, the one thing anger always steals first. To live without constant anger is not to live without emotion, it's to live with intention. It's to decide every day that your peace is worth more than your pride, that your time is worth more than your temper, that your reason is worth more than your righteousness. The Stoics didn't say you shouldn't care, they said you should care wisely. To them, calmness wasn't passivity, it was precision. It was the ability to aim the mind where it's useful and withdraw it where it's not. And perhaps the greatest irony of all is this: when you stop feeding anger, you gain influence. People trust calm minds. They listen to those who don't need to shout. They follow those who stay steady when others fall apart. Anger may demand attention, but peace commands respect. The Stoic knows this, and he plays the long game. Because the goal isn't to win arguments, it's to win back the self that anger once took hostage. In the end, every burst of fury costs you the same thing: clarity. And without clarity, no man can be wise. That's why the Stoics feared anger more than death. Because death comes once, but anger kills your judgment every day you let it. So the next time you feel that familiar heat, remember this: the one who provoked you has already taken enough. Don't let them take your mind too. Breathe, withdraw inward, and remind yourself: calm is not surrender, it's superiority. There's a moment after every storm when the world falls quiet. The air still smells like rain, the ground is scarred, but something new begins. Stillness. That's the moment the Stoic lives for. The aftermath. The space where you can look at your anger not as an enemy, but as raw energy, unrefined, dangerous, but powerful if shaped with reason. Because anger itself is not evil. It's what you do with it that defines you. The Stoics never said, never feel anger. They said, never let it be your master. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man of his time, faced betrayal, corruption, war, and death on a daily basis. Yet his writings contain no hatred, only reflection. He would begin his mornings reminding himself of the kinds of people he would meet that day: the arrogant, the jealous, the ungrateful. And he would not curse them, he would prepare for them. That's the Stoic strategy: anticipation over reaction. When you expect imperfection, you are never surprised by it. Anger thrives on shock. Remove the element of surprise, and half its power dissolves. Preparation is the first discipline. Before you enter the day, you remind yourself, someone will insult me. Someone will betray my trust. Something will not go as planned. You don't do this to live in fear, but to anchor yourself in reality. Because anger feeds on unrealistic expectations, the illusion that the world should obey your sense of justice. Once you strip that illusion, the world can no longer provoke you, it can only present you with choices. The second discipline is self-distance. Seneca advised that when anger begins to rise, you should delay the battle. Don't deny the emotion, observe it. Ask yourself, if a friend were feeling this, what would I tell him to do? That small shift of perspective creates objectivity. You step outside your own heat. The same logic that's impossible to access while you're burning suddenly returns when you imagine you're advising someone else. That's how you escape the trap of emotion, by moving from participant to observer. Epictetus taught his students to rehearse this detachment through visualization. He would have them picture insults, misfortunes, and setbacks before they happened, so when they arrived, the students could greet them with composure. It's not pessimism, it's emotional conditioning. You can't control the stimulus, but you can train the nervous system that meets it. Modern Stoicism would call this cognitive rehearsal, but to the ancients, it was spiritual armor. And once you wear it long enough, peace stops being a fragile mood, it becomes muscle memory. The third discipline is reflection. When the heat of the moment has passed, the Stoic looks back not to dwell, but to learn. What did this anger reveal about me? Because every trigger is a teacher. If someone's arrogance enrages you, perhaps you still seek validation. If someone's disrespect wounds you deeply, perhaps your self-worth is still anchored in external opinion. Anger is never random. It points to a dependency, something or someone you've given emotional authority over you. The Stoic uses that awareness to reclaim autonomy. Each insight is a thread pulled from the knot of reaction. Seneca described this process beautifully. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. But delay alone is not the cure, it's the doorway. You pause, you breathe, you think. Then you redirect. The fire that once fueled destruction can be channeled into creation, into discipline, into courage. Anger gives you energy. Stoicism gives it direction. The same force that wants to break can also build if it's under command. Marcus Aurelius turned his frustration into philosophy. Epictetus turned his suffering into teaching. Cato turned his indignation into integrity. You can do the same. When you feel that rising tension, that inner surge, use it. Channel it into motion. Go for a walk. Transform the chemical reaction into clarity. The Stoics didn't sit in silence, pretending to be serene statues. They acted, but with precision. Controlled power is the essence of Stoicism. You can be passionate without being volatile, intense without being impulsive. That's what the world misunderstands about calmness. It's not the absence of energy, it's the mastery of it. But even mastery requires compassion, especially toward yourself. Because you will fail. You'll lose your temper, say things you regret, fall back into old patterns. The Stoic doesn't chase perfection, he pursues progress. Each failure is part of the training. What matters is that you recognize the lapse faster each time, that the recovery gets shorter, the self-awareness sharper. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself not to hate his own imperfections, but to return to the path. When you fall, rise again, begin again, as many times as necessary. That's not weakness, it's endurance. In modern life, this endurance might mean walking away from provocation, refusing to argue online, or choosing silence when others bait you for reaction. To the world, it looks like passivity, but in truth, it's strategy. The Stoic knows that attention is energy. To respond to everything is to scatter your strength across trivialities. To choose your battles is to conserve it for what truly matters. That is the essence of composure, economy of energy. And slowly, something profound begins to change. The triggers that once enslaved you lose their edge. You become harder to offend, slower to react, faster to recover. People notice. They test you less. You speak less but mean more. You stop needing to prove yourself because your calm becomes proof enough. Anger still visits, but now it knocks. It no longer breaks in. You have built a fortress around your reason, not of stone or arrogance, but of understanding. The final discipline, the highest form, is gratitude. Gratitude, not for comfort, but for challenge. The Stoics gave thanks for difficult people, for obstacles, for moments that tested them, because each one sharpened the mind and purified the heart. When you start seeing the world that way, when every offense becomes a lesson, anger loses its poison and becomes medicine. You will still feel the fire, but it will no longer consume you. It will illuminate you. It will remind you that within every human being lives the same capacity for reason and ruin, and you have chosen reason. That is Stoic victory. Not silence, not detachment, but the art of remaining unshaken while still fully human. There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes that not every battle is meant to be fought. Some are meant to be understood. The war inside you, the endless struggle between reason and rage, isn't won by crushing one side, but by learning to listen to both without losing your center. That's the essence of Stoicism. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about mastering your emotions so completely that they serve you instead of sabotage you. Anger is not evil. It's a message. It tells you something about what you value, what you fear, and where you still believe the world owes you something. The Stoic listens, decodes the message, and then releases it. He doesn't act from anger, he acts after anger. That's the difference between chaos and clarity, between instinct and wisdom. When you can feel the flame but choose when to move, you become untouchable. Because control over yourself is the only real control you will ever have. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Anger, in that sense, is one of life's greatest teachers. It presents you with the raw test of self-command. It doesn't ask for theory, it asks for proof. Every time you resist the urge to strike back, you are proving that you have become your own master. Every delay before reaction, every deep breath instead of a harsh word, is a silent victory over the primitive self that still lives within you. And these victories, though invisible to others, are what shape the invisible architecture of your character. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people act as they do because they think they are right. And so, he trained his mind to respond not with hatred, but with understanding. That doesn't mean approval. It means seeing ignorance for what it is, blindness, not malice. When you recognize that truth, compassion naturally replaces contempt. You begin to pity rather than hate, to guide rather than punish. And that shift marks the true passage from anger to wisdom. The Stoic doesn't excuse injustice, he transcends it by refusing to let it poison his own spirit. To live this way is not easy. It's a constant act of rebellion, not against the world, but against the lesser parts of yourself. Every day, you'll be tempted to surrender to irritation, to let emotion dictate tone, to let ego speak before reason. But each time you pause, even once, you reclaim your throne. You are no longer the servant of mood, impulse, or pride. You have become, as Epictetus said, a ruler of the inner kingdom. And no empire, no wealth, no victory in argument compares to that. Think of the calmest people you've ever met. The ones who remain composed when everything falls apart. They are not calm because life spared them. They are calm because they have suffered and learned. They have walked through their own fire and came out refined. Their silence is not emptiness, it's strength under perfect control. That is what Stoicism produces, not cold detachment, but radiant stability. The kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. And yet, this calm isn't final. It must be renewed daily, like breathing, like prayer. The Stoic never says, "I am calm now." He says, "I will choose calm again." Because anger will always return. wearing new disguises: frustration, jealousy, resentment, moral outrage. You cannot banish it forever, but you can recognize it faster, respond to it wiser, and let it pass sooner. Over time, the space between stimulus and reaction widens until one day you realize the things that once broke you no longer even reach you. This is the quiet miracle of Stoic practice. You become so still that nothing external can disturb you, and yet so alive that everything internal moves with purpose. You stop seeking peace through control of the world and begin cultivating peace through mastery of the self. You realize that the real battlefield was never outside, it was always within. And when that realization dawns, the world loses its power to make you angry, because you finally understand no one can offend what you no longer defend. In that understanding lies freedom, the kind that empires, lovers, and enemies cannot touch. The kind of freedom that Marcus Aurelius had when he wrote, "In the middle of war and betrayal, you have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That is the end of anger, not its absence, but its transcendence. To feel the fire, to acknowledge it, and still to walk forward with calm steps, clear vision, and an untouchable mind. To hold power without cruelty. To face offense without surrender. To choose serenity when chaos invites you to burn. That is what it means to handle anger the Stoic way. So, when the next wave of fury rises within you, remember this: you are not here to extinguish it, nor to feed it. You are here to transform it, to turn fire into light, heat into clarity, reaction into reason. Because anger, when mastered, becomes discipline. And discipline, when perfected, becomes peace. That peace is not silence. It is the sound of your soul finally obeying itself. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.